Hello and welcome. The first questions here are actually the first part, the second part of which I read and talked about last week now, and got them a bit the wrong way round, but it's okay, it's a refresher as it's partly covering the same subject. I'm interested in becoming a Buddhist monk in a few years, but I'm curious about health. If I spend years in a monastery, become old and sick and have no one outside, if I physically can't practice anymore, then what? ? Is there an institution that takes care of old monks? ? Thank you for everything you're doing. Okay, so we did partly answer that last week, but specifically, firstly, there are a lot of ifs there. They're not ifs, more a case of these things will happen. We get old, we get sick, and we die. And if we leave our practice, our development of moral virtue, our practice of meditation, and the development of wisdom until later on in life, it's all the more difficult. This is why there should be always a sense of urgency to put in effort with regards to keeping precepts, with regards to being disciplined about practicing meditation each and every day for a good period of time, and for the development of wholesome mind states and the reduction of unwholesome mind states by guarding our senses as to what we're doing, what we're viewing, what we're listening to. And this is the practice. The earlier on we begin that in our lives, the more easy it is to continue it towards the end of our lives and actually suffer less. We're looking at reducing suffering, eradicating suffering, finally, from this life, in order to be free from rebirth, free from suffering in this lifetime, and no future rebirth, by the eradication of desire, wanting things to be otherwise. Either something we want that we cannot have is desire, and it's being unsatisfied and therefore causing suffering. Not wanting to have a physical ailment or pain is aversion to having something you already have. Similarly, something you're unable to get away from is causing you suffering. But if through your practice you've developed the quality, the power of equanimity, we call upekkha in the Pali language, then you're far more readily able to deal with all of these conditions, both emotionally and physically. So my first question back to you is, you're saying in a few years. Why a few years? Maybe it is you have some debts to repay, some responsibilities to reallocate or dispense with. That's okay. But if there's anything stopping you other than important commitments that would prohibit you from ordination, then why wait? You might not be alive in a year's time. You might not be alive tomorrow. We don't know. This is why there should always be a sense of urgency. You're questioning health. What makes you think in a few years' time your health will still be good? If it's good now is a good time to ordain. Now, with regards to aging, sickness and death, if we're joining the monastery, then all our needs are taken care of. If you physically can't practice anymore, then what? Well, you can always meditate. If you've been sustaining a practice of meditation throughout your life, even on your deathbed, laying there, this is the time to be experiencing jhana, free from bodily feelings, free from mental proliferation, and therefore free from suffering, in order to make that death far more easy to deal with, to accept, to be comfortable with, to even just see the benefits of all the good you've done throughout your life, and to be grateful for that opportunity, and to know if you've reached a level of becoming free from suffering in this lifetime, having detached, cut away finally all the fetters tying you back to rebirth, to know that you're free from this now, or at least will only have the fortune, the good fortune, to be reborn into the human realm again, in connection, in close proximity to the Dharma and this knowledge, in order that you can continue your practice. That at the very least. This is the comfort that will be with you in whatever posture, sitting, standing, or lying down. It doesn't matter what your physical condition is, this practice can continue. So that's not a problem. And is there an institution that takes care of old monks? Yes, indeed there is. It's called the Sangha. You take refuge in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. The Sangha is the body of monks, bhikkhus and nuns, bhikkhunis, and we take care of our own. They are our new family. We renounce our birth family, our mothers, our fathers, our sisters, our brothers, our sons, our daughters, and cousins and nephews, etc. And we take on the dependence of our teacher, and they us. It's a reciprocal arrangement, but we all take care of each other. So when there are old and sick monks living amongst our community in the Sangha, we take care of them and we look after them until they die, and then we take care of their funeral arrangements, their burial or their cremation, whatever it might be in whichever part of the world. And this is the institution you might be referring to. You did mention, what if you don't have anyone outside to take care of you? This is fine, you do. You have the lay community. They are there, and it is their responsibility or their care, their wish to take care of the Sangha, to support the Sangha. So no more needs to put anything off. This was a gentleman who was asking about insurance and what have you, I think. So this is all unnecessary concerns and obstacles that are coming from a place of Mara, really, the manifestation of greed, hatred and delusion, but worldly cares, that you're not quite yet ready to renounce or give up. Or it could be that you just don't quite have the confidence, saddha, faith, actual ability, or that is an obstacle, without that confidence, without that faith, to commit, to go forth. When we say go forth, this is the ordination process. We are renouncing worldly life for the sake of dependence on the Sangha, but essentially we are homeless mendicants, homeless beggars, relying on others for our food, medicine, clothing and shelter, and no other. We're not even allowed to cook our own food, store our own food. It has to be given to us ready to eat each and every day, and any surplus given away or disposed of. So this is the life you take on if you wish to become a monk, or a nun indeed. Okay. I ended up here seeing 8 circles arrayed around a central circle on my ceiling at night. I'm trying to figure out what might have created that effect. I think God was pointing me to something, and I thought of the Eightfold Path, but could it be something else? Then you refer to the solar system and some other aspects of planets going around the sun. I'm confused but determined to figure this out. Maybe I need to do some meditation, but Christian meditation. Not sure how to go about doing that. Any ideas? Okay. Why do you need to figure it out? Seeing is seeing, hearing is hearing, smelling is smelling, tasting is tasting, thinking is thinking. Thoughts come about in your mind, and they come from a seemingly nowhere place. Suddenly you're thinking about something. Where did that thought come from? You may be able to trace it back to a trigger, but it seemingly comes from nowhere. And similarly, our minds can project all kinds of visual images, audible sounds, smells, tastes and feelings. This is the power of our mind, which is after all the forerunner of all things. But rather than me just saying to you, well, you saw 8 rings in a circle concentrically on your ceiling, it's just imagination, mental formations, sankhara, just that. I can say to you that whatever it is, it's phenomena. And whether this was literally flaming letters from God, or angels, or devas, or yakas, giving you a sign or not, it is still just visual phenomena or audible phenomena, sensory phenomena, of which you are conscious with vijnana, sense consciousness. You experience, so there's no taking away from the experience, imaginary or not. However, 8 rings, what's the significance? There's so much significance put in numbers. If it had been 3, it could have been the triple gem, for instance, that we take refuge in, the Buddha, the Dharma, the Sangha. Or you might, as you say, as a Christian, think, well, the Father, the Son and the Holy Spirit, the Holy Trinity there. 3, it could have been 4, it could have been the 4 rings, it could have been, which would represent the 4 noble truths. 5, it could have been the 5 khandhas. 6, it could have been those 6 senses I've just spoken of, seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, touching and thinking. 7 could have been the 7 factors of enlightenment, which you would get after practicing 8, the Noble Eightfold Path, and so on. Don't think too much. There's so much thinking going on. That's where most of the problems come from in the world. Too much thinking, and usually that thinking is about things that have happened in the past and things that might happen in the future. Now, that doesn't mean there's anything wrong with learning lessons from the past and making plans for the future. But those lessons and those plans are being acted upon in the present moment, here and now. Anything you cannot act upon in the present moment, here and now, put aside, forget about, ignore. Don't train yourself for the what-ifs, and don't regret the what's been done. Do what can be done now to help yourself and to help others. This is actively taking care of yourself and all beings and the planet in which you live by a relevant means, something that's available to you. If this is simply by keeping precepts, and that is by no means a simple thing, that is the greatest gift you can give to others, by offering that gift of doing no harm, either to yourself or others, through no killing, stealing, sexual misconduct, lying or taking of intoxicants. Those 5 precepts. If it was 5 rings on your ceiling, it could have reminded you of those. So I wouldn't pay too much thought about it, and certainly don't bring it into your meditation, whether your meditation's Christian or Buddhist. This meditation word gets a bit mixed up. People think, I will go and meditate on that subject. What they mean to say is, I'm going to go and think about that. If you're going to meditate, we use the word meditate to as the English translation of the word samadhi on the Noble Eightfold Path, which is actually really used in conjunction with sati, mindfulness. So we have, after right effort, sama vidya, sama right effort, sama sati, sama samadhi, right mindfulness and right meditation. Meditation isn't about thinking on a subject. It is maintaining your conscious awareness, a single pointed focus on one thing, a meditation object. You're not thinking about it, you're just using it as an anchor to stop you, hold back your rambling mind from thinking about other things, to keep it in place, to keep it tied to a post and restrained from going here, there and everywhere, wandering in thought, in overthinking. So you're not going to want to develop overthinking by giving it a complicated subject matter to think about. Just watch the breath in meditation, or say your prayers if it's Christian meditation. Don't think about the 8 rings on your ceiling that you saw once and may never see again, or may see a different number of rings in the future. And if you believe that they came from God or from angels, then fair enough. But nevertheless, this isn't going to help you in any way be free from suffering within this lifetime. What will help you be free from suffering in this lifetime and to avoid rebirth, or to have a better rebirth into at least the human realm or the heavenly realms, then that is very clearly given to you in the Noble Eightfold Path, and the steps in that Noble Eightfold Path of establishing right view, right intention, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, and right meditation. So I hope that the rings, at least by making you think about the Noble Eightfold Path and for bringing you here to this listen to this talk and ask this question, has given you an alternative perspective on what are currently your own views and views that you've grown up with, have been conditioned to through cultural surroundings, but also offer you the opportunity, without anything particularly contrary, to have an alternative perspective on life itself. And one more thing. So I think this might be the second part of another question. Then if it says one more thing, I get them. I try and keep your questions isolated to one question. If you send one or two, they don't necessarily come to me together. So they get put. I put them down here in whatever order I see them. So one more thing. Let's hope it's not critical to the question. I believe you said in another video that you forced yourself to open your hips. Oh, that sounds drastically painful. I don't think I said quite that. And I see that you are sitting perfectly on a flat surface with no cushion. Can you share what you did to force your hips open? Oh, thank you. There's a video, how to sit in meditation. Please watch that and I demonstrate. Can't demonstrate here because I'm wearing my robes and it's a bit awkward to do so. But yes, I'm sitting on just a flat surface. It's sand, so it's not hard concrete, but normally I'm sitting the other side of the wall there on hard concrete, and it makes no difference. You don't force your hips open. You have to some extent to be able to sit like this, which is in the half lotus position, flat on the floor without a cushion. When you first try and sit in this position, your knees will be up here somewhere, and you'll be sitting like a cross-legged school pupil when they sit on the floor. That is the wrong way to sit because the legs are literally crossed. Here, my legs are not crossed. My right foot is on my left thigh. My left foot is under my right thigh. There's nothing really crossed there apart from the two shins, but there's a little gap between. There's no compression of anything. I have to be careful what I say, otherwise all the doctors write in and say, no, that's not biologically correct. But I won't get pins and needles or numbness however long I sit in this posture because nothing's being compressed. Unless I lean one way or the other, like that, when you will compress something underneath you, where your body contacts the surface. But sitting like this, upright, balanced, you should have no difficulty. But at first, your knees will be up here. And with time, with this practice, without using all sorts of aids and cushions and equipment, your pelvis will start to loosen. Not open up your hips or anything drastically as if you're about to give birth to a baby, but just the weight of your thighs and your knees will just gradually allow your pelvis, I guess it's your pelvis or hips, to become more flexible with time. But don't force anything. You do yourself some horrendous injury. If your knees aren't flexible enough, as mine weren't originally, then don't try and sit like this straight away. Please watch that video where I go through it stage by stage how you get to this position. It's a gradual process, but only a few months of doing it all day, every day. But if you're just doing it once a week, then it might take a few years to be able to sit like this. It depends how determined you are. Frankly, it doesn't matter how you sit, but if you're too comfortable leaning on cushions and in need of all sorts of additional aids, it rather defeats the object of being able to meditate, because you should be able to practice meditation in all four postures in any place, anytime, anywhere. And that is not possible if you require special equipment to play you beautiful tunes or sounds or binaural beats, whatever they are, or if you need special cushions of a particular nature containing certain wheat from certain regions of the world, or if you need specially made wooden stools or extremely important rattly aluminium water bottles to keep you company all day long, then you're relying on external sources of comfort. We try and establish within our meditation practice and progress towards being able to sustain for a long time contentment and comfort without any external aids or sources or stimuli. So we can simply close our eyes and observe the breath and be content with that, and find ourselves before too long in deep absorbed states of meditation, of samadhi and jhana, where we're secluded from obstacles to meditation, secluded from the 5 hindrances, restlessness and worry, or let's say the sensual desire, aversion, sleepiness, restlessness and worry, or doubt, secluded from all of those thoughts coming up in your mind to just the pure joy, physical rapture, mental joy, pleasure of this peaceful, tranquil, calm state of mind and relaxed body. This is the first part, and another question. Are there any monks with skin problems? I'm sure there are. I have redness on my face, head, face, and get flaky skin, and I actually need to take care of that, and it gets really bad. So it's not a matter of beautifying, but being normal. Do you know any monks with such issues, and what would your advice be for someone with such problems wishing to ordain? So in the questions when you ordain, you need to be healthy. If you have a serious condition such as eczema, or I don't know, I don't know much about such conditions, but I know there are some very serious skin conditions that one might need to take care of whilst you have the benefit of modern medicine wherever you live, before you approach the idea of taking ordination. But just for normal skin complaints, rashes, and bear in mind, moving to a different climate or a different environment, even a different diet, you will develop all kinds of new issues with both your body, with your skin, with your and with your mind. You'll have a whole new array of elements to be dealing with, and this often puts the others that you arrive with on the back burner. So what's troubling you now will probably be the least of your worries when you decide to ordain and when you become a monk. So at least for the first few years, you might have other reasons to suffer. So what you can't get sorted out before you ordain, as long as it doesn't mean you need continual medical attention, there will be available medicines in the monastery, and they will be distributed to you as and when necessary. And usually I think it's okay if you have certain kinds of medical requirements, some sort of creams, to take what you have with you, but don't take a supply for any length of time. Just take enough so that you know, or you can show others what it is you need. So say for instance you need some kind of cream, take that kind of cream, and then maybe they can match it to the closest alternative in that place where you're going to. And do I know particularly of any monks with conditions? Well, I'm sure I do, but we wouldn't necessarily discuss it with each other. We'd just go to the monk who's in charge of looking after the health of the other monks. Monks in communities usually have appointed roles, so one might take care of the electricity aspects of the buildings, one might take care of the plumbing, one might take care of the brickwork or the concreting, another the woodwork, another the health of the monks. They don't need to be medically qualified, they just have to be able to have access to somebody who can assist if necessary, and be able to point the brothers or the sisters in the right direction for getting help, or giving them the necessary supplements or medicines that they might require. So don't worry too much about it, as long as it's not a debilitating condition at the moment. And it doesn't matter if it's just an aesthetic thing, what you look like, that doesn't matter at all. You'll see often I'll have rashes here or bites here, lurgies going on, that you might or see or not see on whatever, however you're watching this. I've got some kind of spot thing going on here now, a bite, because I'm living in a tropical climate with all kinds of creatures crawling all over me at night, doing their business and biting me and scratching me, and you're not aware of this while you're meditating or while you're sleeping perhaps, and you're just picking up little infections and things that your body isn't acclimatized to, isn't used to. Even the local people here get rashes and fungal infections and all kinds of odd things. I'm very fortunate that I've become so very resilient to many of these in India, I think, because I wasn't resilient when I first got there. But the medical care in my Sangha, in my monastery, was, well, second to none. I mean, I had basically cholera for the first 3 weeks on my arrival there. I think I was there okay for the first 14 days because I was in a quarantine. It was during COVID time, so I was in quarantine in a room in myself in the building that they set aside for lay visitors. I had a guest room, and because there were no lay visitors, I had to stay there for 14 days for quarantine. And then I moved into the monastery, and through my own doing, my own lack of mindfulness, when washing up my bowl before taking my food, because there we didn't go on Pindapata, we ate in a communal dining room, all 108 monks together, in peace and harmony and quiet, I might add, and very, very comfortably too, and very harmoniously. But I would swish my bowl out with water and go in my eagerness to get my food, rice and dal and curries, and the food was wonderful there, and all put in the bowl with the water from the tap which I'd used to rinse the bowl with, not realizing that that was not the drinking water, or realizing that but not mindfully paying attention to drain the bowl fully before getting it. So I was eating some of this dodgy water for a while, which gets a little bit mixed up with the wastewater in the city in which it is, and therefore gave myself a terrible dose of something. But they give you these big brown pills to take, which are some kind of antibiotic which stays in your system forever. It is reputed. So I've heard. Once you've received a dose over a few days of this very strong antibiotic, it never leaves you. I think it stays in your system and seems to thereafter protect you from anything else that comes along, as do when you get bitten by one of the ants in India. And firstly, my arm, it swelled up as big. I was due to go on a visa run. I had to fly to Nepal and then come back because my visa was running out or something. But no, I was not. I was going on my 12-hour bus journey back to Bangalore for the recitation of the Patimokkha on an Uposatha day. And that very same day, I got bitten by an ant on my arm, and my arm swelled up as big as a football on my arm. And I thought, this isn't right at all. So I went to the local hospital, and they had to give me an injection. And they could give you an injection which is not only an antihistamine, it's also another thing that is apparently permanent resistance towards this particular kind of ant's bites. And thereafter, although those bites were very painful, I never swelled up to the extent that I couldn't move my arm or anything like that. And on those very crowded Indian buses, this is a considerably difficult situation to be with, I can assure you, for 12 hours overnight, but sitting up on a very bumpy up and down mountains bus ride with people all crammed next to you. So yes, so these are things you have to know to expect, and will really bring in a little bit of appearance-wise skin condition or take it out of the limelight as being something that you'll consider very, very insignificant and unimportant indeed. I don't mean to belittle your condition. I don't know what it is. It might be very serious, in which case, as I said, you need to get it looked at before you travel or do anything about ordination, maybe. I'm not sure. Some tales from the past there, sneaking out into my questions and answers. They do from time to time. I hear about the idea of getting the student to the point of not having any more questions. I feel as though I have entered this state here and there where I'm no longer wondering anything, and everything seems to be very clear and there are no questions left. As a practitioner, or even such deep practice as monkhood, how does this state of being arise, and how does it stick around very long? And does it stick around very long? So if you had no question, if somebody has no questions, there would be no question to answer. And therefore, this is an irreversible state. So in answer to the second part of your question, does it stay around for how long? What you really would be referring to is enlightenment, fully awake, fully understanding, without any doubt. So rather than bringing a student to a place of having no questions, the student is arriving at a place, or let's say establishing, attaining to the first stage of enlightenment, sotapanna, in that they have no doubt. No doubt, that is, in the Buddha, confidence in the Buddha as the teacher. No doubt, that is, in the teachings, the Dharma, the teachings of the Buddha. And no doubt in the fact that they'd attained sufficient development of mind, wisdom, by developing wholesome mind states, reducing unwholesome mind states, to see very clearly the true characteristics of existence, having no doubt in impermanence, no doubt in suffering, no doubt in there being no self, anatta, anicca, dukkha, anatta. With the eradication of doubt, there are no questions. And this, by its very nature, is irreversible. So if that helps you answer the question you're asking, the questioner with no questions, then when you have no doubts, there will be a permanent state of no more needing to ask questions. One might question one's self through the nature of developing wisdom still further as to your reaction to something. You may still see through sensual contact, you may still see liking, you may still see disliking, you may see attachment, you may still see aversion. This is recognizable, and to some extent going towards answering your own questions or satisfying your own doubts, because through that, experientially, where you're liking something or you're disliking something, you can see the nature of existence, anicca, its impermanence, in that very emotion, in that very desire or desire not to have. You'll see that it will be there for a while and it will go and not be there, not be interrupting you anymore. You will see that feelings will arise and feelings will pass away. Everything in your mind is coming and going continuously. You're experiencing anicca. You're experiencing the suffering, the unsatisfactoriness of those phenomena, those experiences, and this is showing you clearly the nature of dukkha. And by this, you're also experiencing how out of control all of this is. Your own body, even your physical body and your thinking brain, is not within the power of your control, and therefore is not you. You are merely observing from the point of view of citta, the mind, all of those goings on. I believe in one video you mentioned that you can still have thoughts in jhana, but my understanding is that there are no thoughts in jhana or even body perceptions. But this I understood from reading a book by accomplished Pa-Auk students, so it seems the opposite to what you said. Can you elaborate? So I don't know anything about Pa-Auk tradition, but I can elaborate on what I might have said. Certainly in the first jhana, you still have thoughts, you're still thinking. because you albeit in the first jhana, deeply absorbed state of meditation coming from samadhi. So samadhi is fully focused on your meditation object and becoming deeply absorbed in that, so that you become secluded from, and this is first jhana, secluded from those 5 hindrances that I've just spoken of. You will experience in first jhana, you will still experience both physical pleasure, a relaxed and comfortable feeling, and mental joy, a peaceful and tranquil mind. And you will still have thought in that sense. You'll still be thinking, but the thinking process will be so much less obstructive because it won't be linked through attachment to whatever sensual contact there may be, even from the mind, through thought itself, through imagination, phenomena, because you are secluded from those 5 hindrances. So sense consciousness you are secluded from externally, but not internally, not within the body and the thinking mind. Only in the second jhana and third jhana, so it's divided, jhana can be divided into 4 stages, but try not to get too much entwined with what stage you're at, because the likelihood is that we're not at any stage of jhana if we're even considering those ideas. You're just thinking about trying to get into a samadhi, a state of samadhi at that stage. So just relax and don't worry about labels, but yes, there is still thought in jhana. After the first jhana, second and third jhana, there will be seemingly no thought, nothing to be thinking about, because you are secluded from the hindrances. But also in the second jhana and third jhana, you're also secluded from bodily feelings and from mental emotions. So there's nothing really to think about, but there is mental clarity. There is that awareness of this state. So to some extent one could describe that as thought. So I did not ever say that there is no thought. Only in fourth jhana, very deeply absorbed now, it will seemingly be that there is no thinking, but there is still awareness in that sense. These are the 4 rupa jhanas, so jhanas reliant on form. Then come the 4 arupa jhanas, formless jhanas, which are a very highly attained state of meditation where there is no thought. Arupa meaning not of this bodily form. So this is the experience, if you like, of sunyata, complete emptiness, of no thought. But that is really something you don't need to trouble yourself with, because when that happens, it will happen in due course, in its own time, with your practice. What one should always be concentrating is what you can do now, not worrying about what might or may not come along later on in this lifetime or in many lifetimes ahead of you, but what you can experience right now in the present moment. And how is it working for you? How is it helping you progress towards Nibbana? I have no idea of the time because I didn't look when I started. Normally when I say that, it means that, oh, I can look at that incense stick, that'll give me a clue, won't it? It's still going, so I'll keep going. You never know with those, they vary considerably. Right. I'd love to hear more about your experiences at Amaravati Chithurst. Apologies if you've spoken about this elsewhere. Well, I don't think I have spoken about it actually much. And as I've already spoken a little bit about the past today, we can kind of continue on that theme, but there's not much to say. I've only had a few visits for just a day when there's been an occasion going on to Amaravati. That's the larger monastery in the UK of the Ajahn Chah Thai forest tradition group of monasteries throughout the world, which was built to accommodate more monks, more guests, and hold big special occasions on the sort of northern outskirts of London. But on the southern, well, not outskirts of London, but in the southern home counties in Sussex, well, actually it's on the Hampshire-Sussex border, near to where I used to live, is Chithurst that you refer to, Chitta Viveka, meaning Viveka, seclusion, refuge. That's Viveka, refuge for the mind, mental refuge. Refuge isn't quite the word, it'll come to me in a minute. Anyway, Chitta Viveka, Wat Pa Chitta Viveka. Wat Pa means forest monastery. It literally is an old house, but it's got little external kutis now, and it is situated within about 300 acres of forest with lakes and rivers and waterfalls. Very beautiful. And I've spent many an afternoon there as a lay person wandering, as anybody can. But as a monk, I've only spent a very short time there on the occasion when I had to visit England, again for visa reasons, back in 22. But I was only in England itself for a month, so I only went to Chitta Viveka for one day. But prior to that, I spent many a weekend there when I was still working, and I've spent a few nights at a time staying there. And to speak of my experience there, living there as with other residents and their own experiences, wouldn't really do it justice because I don't have enough exposure. Suffice to say, having lived in other branch monasteries in other countries, well, in Thailand, of that particular lineage, the Ajahn Chah Thai forest lineage, both in northeast Thailand and also in southern Thailand, or the middle part of Thailand, where I've stayed, it's pretty much the same. Apart from the weather conditions, everything is pretty much the same. We're not so interested in weather or the actual food that we're eating, just that we get fed and that we can survive in whatever conditions that we're presented with. So the community life, the daily routine, the practice itself is the same. So it is pretty much what I talk about whenever I refer to community life. Usually involves a work period, sometimes some activities that are there to keep the community going, both materialistically and physically, and in good repair, and each other going in support of each other, assisting with each other's needs. But there's not much I can really say, but would suggest if you are there or near in another country to such places, you go and experience for yourself what it is like to be around. And most of these places you can go and stay for a few days with their permission arranged beforehand, and you'll get a real taste and experience of monastic life, keeping for yourself, keeping 10 precepts and really immersing yourself in not only the Dharma, but actually less the Dharma, you'll be less listening, less reading, and more doing, more practicing. You might even be working quite hard, but this is with a view to seeing how you apply that mindfulness to all of your daily activities, how you see aversion in your represented in your behaviour, through having to do tasks you might not have envisaged having to do, not wanting to do. You might go to a peaceful, beautiful monastery and think, wow, I can come here and meditate for 3 days, and find yourself scrubbing toilets in an old block far from the main community, with all kinds of insects and animals and rats coming at you from all directions for 7 days straight on your hands and knees in the sweltering heat. This could happen, and you have to deal with the arising emotions of what comes about as a result of that. And rather than packing your bags and walking out of the gate and escaping as quickly as you can, carrying on, determined, knowing this is not liking, saying to yourself, this is really not liking, I'm not liking this, I can think of much better ways to spend my time. But can you? You might sit on a mat in a beautiful environment with all sorts of conducive, meditative support surrounding you, but are you developing wholesome mind states and reducing unwholesome mind states, or is your mind just wandering here and there? What that real harsh training, all that work and cleaning is doing, is humbling you, is making you realize that you're not in control, It's letting go of preconceived ideas, and it's immersing yourself in the practice without any conditions, unconditionally giving yourself to the Dharma rather than hoping to get something from it. And that is letting go, and that is what trains the mind in the right direction. It might not seem like it at the time, and it didn't to me, but after the event, as you walk out the gates eventually, you're magnetically drawn back forevermore, because that is a place where you actually found real peace. You won't necessarily find that real peace in an artificially created meditative environment that you might find on an expensive organized retreat somewhere. And that kind of peace doesn't go with you, isn't transferable into other worldly activities. Whereas what you learn in a place like Amaravati or Cittaviveka is ultimately transferable. It goes with you both physically, wherever you might be, and is usable within all worldly activities, and all of your own activities of body, speech and mind will be affected, guided and altered positively as a result of that training. And you must remember, these places are training monasteries. They're for the training of bhikkhus, for the training of monks. Also the benefit of lay people to visit and stay and offer service and help and assist and receive similar training, but primarily they're the training environment for monks, people who have dedicated the rest of their lives to just that and nothing else, renouncing their worldly lives. You at the end of this are going home. They are not. So one must always respect that. And you learn by that respect of that the very important part of this fourfold assembly, how strong it really is, how the bhikkhus, monks, bhikkhunis, nuns, upasakas, laymen, upasikas, lay women, all are interdependent on each other, like four legs of the table. For the table to be sturdy, it needs all four parties strong and available and there to support each other, an interdependence. And this is really my experience as a layperson staying in such places that I learned the most from. How one integrates into monastic life but isn't part of that sangha. You're supporting that sangha. When you are part of that sangha, you are very much reliant on that support, but you're not part of that is supporting you. You're not, as a monk, you're not going home afterwards. You're staying here. I'm staying here. I'm not going on all the tourist excursions around Sri Lanka that there are going on, because my duty is to be here practicing. After Pindapata, after my meal, after our little interaction, my duty is to remain here in solitude practicing meditation until this evening, when I continue with much the same. Here, I don't go seeing this, seeing that. Albeit on the very rare occasion when someone might wish to take me, like the other evening, up the boat on a river, and they wanted to do that. And I also wanted to see my surroundings. This is the river that is right nearby, and I walk over all day, and it was my usual helper, the person who picks me up when I need picking up in his tuk-tuk, who offered to take me on his little boat there. So it was a useful excursion alone. I was on my own, so there were no conversations other than between him and the boat driver. So these are the limited experiences that we have as members of the Sangha, that lay people, of course, visiting here would be able to go and enjoy all sorts of wonderful things here in Sri Lanka. And I mean, on that note, I've had few visitors recently, both Sri Lankans whom have moved abroad and been living abroad for many years, so are here visiting family on holidays, people whom are just doing that from other countries having their holidays here, and not so many local Sri Lankan people who might see me each and every day anyway on Pindapata. But I do notice in the viewing statistics that many more Sri Lankan people might be listening to these talks. And please, to those Sri Lankan people, if you are local or nearby or passing through, as have quite a few recently, do feel free to drop in here any time. You don't have to make any pre-arranged times, and you certainly don't need to bring anything. I'm more than well, I have more than sufficient supplies and support here, so just bring yourselves. Even if you don't speak English, it's okay, you can just come and say hello. It's always nice to see people like that, and also give something back to you in terms of we could sit and meditate together for a few minutes, or I can give you a blessing. We can interact in that way. So this is how lay life, monastic life interacts, but is also must be considered also as quite separate. Now there's a kind of halfway house, but it isn't really even then much of a grey area, in that when you're thinking of ordaining, you might live in a monastery for some time on the 10 precepts as what they call an anagarika, a white-robed monk or nun, anagarika. In that case, you've taken extra precepts, you're training towards your pabaja, your first stage of novice ordination, leading to upasampada, your higher ordination, bhikkhu ordination. So this is quite a long process. In that time, you're having to really straddle the fence. You're the link, the go-between, often, in that sense, being an anagarika. I was anagarika down for quite some time. You can be quite busy because you're the lay person's point of contact and the monk's point of contact, and often you'll find yourself as steward, so sitting with a monk who can't be alone with a woman, for instance, in order that he can have a conversation with his sister or his auntie who might be visiting, or a lay practitioner who's visiting the monastery. And I used to have to sit there and listen to a conversation in Thai that I couldn't understand, and it could go on for hours, but sit there meditating, thinking, this is why I wanted to become a monk, to sit here for hours listening to these people talking about their family. But of course, this is a thing that you experience. And in that moment of experience, you can see a little bit of aversion coming up there. I didn't think I'd be doing this. I could have done better. If I was at this monastery, I was at that monastery, this wouldn't happen. You see all these questions coming up. What are they? They're not questions, are they? Like I was saying earlier, they're just doubts. They're doubts about the practice. You've fallen outside of the parameters of the Noble Eightfold Path. You've lost right view. If you have right view, you'd see that this is anicca. It's just impermanent. It is a bit of suffering, yes, that's life. This is the nature of existence, but it's not self. It's not actually something you can take personally. They haven't particularly picked on you to bore you when you'd rather be meditating in your kuti, or they may have, but regardless, you're realizing it's out of your control. It could have been that you were sitting peacefully in your kuti and you had a stroke. Your body decided it was not going to work anymore, and you were there disabled for the rest of your life. This no more is within your control than whether you're called to sit and supervise a long conversation. All of these things you're coming to terms with in the crucible, the little hot furnace of molten burning metal that one uses to really refine metals out of ore into gold, this crucible, they use it for experiments, a burning bowl thing. This focused burning crucible of both physical feelings, mental emotions, all going on, is bringing to the boil and bringing sharply into focus everything that you have by way of defilements, greed, hatred and delusion. And it is those you have decided to go forth towards ordination, or you're staying at the monastery for a certain length of time to eradicating those kilesas, lobha, dosa, moha, these greed, hatred and delusion root defilements of ours that must be cut off at the root, unable to be re-established before we can be free from suffering in this lifetime and attain to Nibbana. So I think on that note, I shall leave it there until next time. So tomorrow, I think. Be happy and stay well. Sukhi hotu. Be happy and stay well.